What's ahead for Australia for the balance of this decade? That's what I discussed today with leading demographer Simon Kuestenmacher. Obviously, forecasting is important because it helps us make better investment decisions, better financial decisions. I guess if we've got a sense of where the world and our economy are going, we can prepare better. Well, at least in theory, that's what forecasting should do. Obviously, in practice, it's much harder as the world keeps throwing surprises at us, doesn't it? But if you've heard my chats with Simon before, you know he shares great insights. So if you're interested in property investment or the future of our country or how it's going to relate to your job and your prosperity, I'm sure you're going to benefit from my chat today. So welcome to this week's show.
Welcome to the Michael Yardney podcast, where twice each week you will learn a number of new ideas regarding success, property investment and money in around 30 minutes. Our show is brought to you by Metropole, who specialise in helping you grow, protect and pass on your wealth through strategic property and wealth advice. Now here's your host, Michael Yardney, Australia's authority in wealth creation through property, who has been voted one of Australia's top 50 most influential thought leaders.
I remember the beginning of this decade well. It really wasn't that long ago that we were introduced to the 2020s, and we were hoping it would be the roaring 20s. But look what's happened since. If anyone would have told you 2 years ago that Australia would be ravaged by bushfires, multiple floods, prolonged periods of lockdown, and a pandemic that killed thousands of people and made us isolate, made us wear masks, that 2 years ago, at the beginning of this decade, you wouldn't have believed me. And just as we thought we were moving out of our COVID cocoons, we were hit with high inflation, rising interest rates, economic concerns. Are we going to have a recession? So it's likely we're about to face a quite different world to what we were hoping for a couple of years ago. So what's ahead for the balance of this decade, and what will it mean for you and me, particularly since we're interested in property owners, property investors, business people? That's what I want to ask leading demographer Simon Kuestenmacher, co-founder of the Demographics Group and a columnist with The Australian and The New Daily. Hi, Simon.
Hi, Michael.
Well, a lot can happen in a decade, can't it? Who would have foreseen, well, if you go back to the previous decade in 2000, 9/11, or the economic crisis of 2008, or the election of an African-American president, or just look at last decade, who in 2010 would have predicted Donald Trump would be president, or Brexit, or aggressive foreign policies of China and Russia, or that 1 billion people would possess handheld devices, those supercomputers. Now, I know predictions are hard to make, and especially about the future. I also know the itch to predict, especially for you, is irresistible. So let's have a go at it. I guess the recent census has given us a bit of a baseline to start with. So after a challenging start to this decade, are we going to have a roaring 20s? Or are there going to be unusual, unpredictable demographic changes ahead?
Well, the demographic changes aren't all that unpredictable, I'd say. From a demographic perspective, we well know what's ahead. That means the 2020s will be the last decade where the baby boomers make up a significant share of the workforce. So by the end of the decade, we will have almost all baby boomers have left the workforce, So that'll be interesting. That means that their values will not be shaping Australia in the same way that they used to. That means they hand over the reins to Gen X, the next generation. That's already happening. Already we have every state premier being a Gen Xer. Technically, Dominic Perrottet in New South Wales even is a millennial, even though he doesn't have the millennial vibe. But that means we're shifting our value sets. That means the baby boomer hierarchy, this hierarchical mindset, that's going to subside. That means we're handing over to flatter hierarchies left, right, and center. And that's important for anyone who runs a business, for people who run a volunteering organization. If you offer rigid hierarchical structures to a volunteer force that is Gen X, that is millennial, you will have a bad decade. So these things are baked into the system already, I must say.
Well, there's going to be baby boomers still wanting to do things. We're going grey, I'm white, but we don't want to slow down, and many of us still want to remain involved, if nothing else, at least part-time.
Exactly. So we are seeing this already, and this trend will continue for older people not doing the hard retirement. Golden watch on Friday, golf course for years on end as of Saturday. That won't happen. People scale down, they slide into retirement. You scale down your weeks, 3 days per week. Maybe you spend a couple of months traveling per year and still consult on the side. To stay active, mentally active, to still have a bit of an income to prop up your superannuation. All that is well. And we know that this trend is going to continue, and we will do more and more to encourage older Australians to stay part of the workforce, because our workforce is shrinking away, and it will be increasingly harder to find migrants, to find skilled workers for professions. So get ready for businesses encouraging their grey-haired cohorts to stay active a bit longer.
Well, I think multi-generational workforces have got a lot to be said for, because there is still a lot of information, a lot of experience in the heads of those older people.
Oh, absolutely. And there's lots and lots of jobs where this experience just pays overall. There are some jobs where being paid by the hour, by the item, by the kilometer, where the experience isn't as important. But in any kind of knowledge job, your experience, your sense of viewing the world through decades of experience, that is worth a lot of money. That really helps organizations.
So if we look at what's going to happen for the balance of this decade, I guess there's going to be more of us, but we're going to be older. And I think the census showed us we're much more multicultural, Simon.
Yes, so we will continue to be a migrant nation. That means increasingly, because the people that are dying right now, they are not as multicultural, as diverse, ethnically speaking, as the younger generations. So we're shifting. Australia is becoming more and more culturally diverse, and we're doing a great job here. We already have 52% of the Australian population being either migrants or the kids of migrants. That means the whole narrative that says, Australia is a racist nation, that really doesn't hold. Sure enough, in a country of 25 million people, you will encounter racial incidents. Racist comments will occur left, right, and center. But overall, we are running a fantastic multicultural country with all those risks that this brings with it in terms of, potential clashes between cultures. But we're doing a great job in moderating all those risks in Australia.
Well, if you think about it, we're talking about what's going to happen for the balance of this decade. If our population is going to grow by 300, 400,000 people, 400 if that's where the government's hoping to get to it. A lot of baby boomers, as we say, are retiring, but they're not leaving their homes. So we're going to have to create a lot of new dwellings, because all these people coming from overseas, and that's a large part of our population growth, they're not bringing houses with them, are they?
That's right. And there is the beauty of demographics when you look at the housing market in play. So we do know that the baby boomers work longer. So why would they leave a house that is still in commutable distance to their job? Why would they want to leave the house? Australians are not downsizing for financial reasons as much as we make it out to be. Australians are stubborn. Australians want to stay in their home. So the baby boomers throughout the whole 2020s are still too young, too active, too physically healthy to leave the home. Australians only downsize once the family home becomes a nuisance to manage, becomes a real physical hazard, and that will only start to be the case in the 2030s. And that will be the time when the baby boomers want to sell off their homes. So the 2030s will be a really interesting decade. Consider that by the 2030s, the young workers, the young Gen Zs of today will have saved enough money for a down payment. And you have this big cohort of baby boomers selling their homes. So there will be a lot of movement in the housing market, much more than in the 2020s.
Well, at the moment, many baby boomers are helping their kids. The bank of mum and dad is providing a deposit or guarantees for their homes. But there's going to be a significant structural change when the boomers and the generation before them, the builders, die off, because it's been suggested there could be a transfer of even up to $6.2 trillion worth of wealth in their residential real estates to their family. Currently, it's suggested that the Australian property market is worth around, all the residential real estate is worth around $9.8 trillion. And it's suggested that probably about 60% of that's held by older generations, the baby boomers and their parents. That makes sense, though, because they've been around long enough to own their homes. But eventually, when they die off, that's going to be transferred. There's going to be a significant transfer of wealth to the next generation who already are going to be in their homes. Some will be able to pay them off, but that will, I guess, give them ability to do all sorts of things with their inheritance.
Oh, absolutely. I've looked at this as well for a column when you say, okay, when will this wealth transfer actually occur? And so we can then say, well, let's look at the baby boomer women when they will die. Because
they die last.
They die last. This is bad news for you, Michael. So
the story is to marry somebody older than you.
Yeah, if that's the goal. That's right. So statistically speaking, the men are about 4 years older than the women, and they die about 4 years sooner. So you will have female widows just being the last ones to die. So if we look at peak dying years for baby boomer women, the peak year will be 2041. So that is still almost 2 decades away. But as soon as 2031, they start to die at scale. So the wealth transfer starts to pick up at the 2030 mark or thereabouts, and will grow like crazy throughout the 30s and will peak in 2041. That means that the next generation down the track, the millennials that come into wealth through inheritance, they actually inherit money at I want to say a bit of an awkward time in the life cycle, in their mid-50s, because by the mid-50s, you should be in your family home already. The kids are probably still with you, but not for much longer. So what the heck do you do with a lot of money that comes your way? Well, you do boring stuff. You pay off the mortgage. It feels good. You put a bit of money aside for the uni career for the kids. But I don't think the wealth transfer will lead to lots and lots of spending on jet skis or motorbikes or any exciting toys.
So some of it will go into property investment if the world continues on as it currently does, because they're going to be in the position to buy their next property. But I hope my kids and grandkids aren't listening to this, because it's going to be quite some time before they get their inheritance. Now, having said that, the census data has come out recently, but has COVID messed up any of the projections that you made at the beginning of this decade?
Well, we missed out on 2 years worth of migration. So you want to remember that in a non-COVID year, we take in 180,000 net new migrants. And in the first year of the pandemic alone, instead of winning 180,000 migrants to Australia, we lost 90,000. So that means this year alone led to a population hole of 270,000 people. Add another year of the pandemic, and we are not playing catch up. We will want to go back to pre-COVID levels of population growth. So there will be forever a hole in the Australian population pyramid. This hole will be, totaling up to about 1 million people as of 2030. So if we look at the 2030 that we thought we were going to have compared to the 2030 that we now are most likely to have, it's 1 million people smaller. That is somewhat interesting, but it's not all that bad news, because we still grow the country by 3 million people instead of 4 million people. So there is still massive growth opportunities hiding in the population cohorts, left, right, and center. But not every year of the age profile is going to grow equally. Before the pandemic, we thought we'd have quite a bit of growth in the 0 to 12 cohort. There will now be a mostly stagnant population. So away goes the primary school building boom, the childcare building boom. That is much slowed down, that trend. Still lots of growth to occur in this decade in the young adult, 15 to 24 market. But we are growing, we're going to see a stagnant population from the mid-20s to early 30s. That is bad news for lots and lots of businesses that look to employing these people, that want to, think about the big corporate players and their annual graduate level intake. These are people in their mid-20s to late 20s, and they are missing out on those folks now. And that's quite a problem for those. But the best news is that despite the lack of population growth, we will still see the millennial generation, the biggest generation in Australia, shifting in the highest spending phase of the life cycle. That means they're entering their 40s, and in the 40s you spend a lot of money because you have...
That's good for the economy, isn't it?
It's great for the economy. By sheer demographic dumb luck, Australia goes through the post-pandemic economic recovery as the millennials reach the highest spending phase of the life cycle. Because you have a lot of money through your couple of promotions when you're in your 40s, and you have kids, you have a big fat mortgage, you have costs related to those kids and to the house, that mean that every dollar that you earn goes straight out the door. And that's super, super helpful for the economy. It's annoying for the 40-somethings, but it's great for the economy.
Now, of course, 3 million extra people, 3.5 million extra people between now and the end of the decade means we're going to need a lot more accommodation. And it's been suggested that for every 3 dwellings currently, we're going to need 1 more. We've actually never built as many properties as that. We're going to have to build new houses in the outer estates, big towers apartment towers to accommodate them, and a lot of infill development. That's going to put a huge strain on the construction industry. I think it's also going to mean town planners are going to have to change their ideas and get rid of this NIMBYism.
Well, the NIMBYism is quite a dramatic problem, and it flies in the face of the whole 20-minute city idea. So if you want to create a 20-minute city, meaning all the amenities of daily life are accessible within a 20-minute drive, walk, bike ride from your home, you can't have a massively sprawled out city. You need to increase the population density of cities. Well, so there's that challenge. And also, of course, town planners want a sustainable city, meaning they want to make sure that you build decent houses, decent quality houses. And sometimes our infill development is building low quality homes that have a life expectancy of 35 years, some of the townhouses, which is not very economically sustainable.
Interesting. It's very different to Europe, where you come from, where I'm always amazed. I go into these hotels that are older than the whole of Australia, the lifespan of Australia, or you go into some of those old, beautiful apartments that have been around for a long time as well. Now, the census data has been trickling out. We haven't got a lot of it just yet. Have you come across any surprises in the census data that's recently come out?
Well, the most positive surprise that I saw was that we saw a 25% increase in the population that self-identified as Indigenous.
Interesting.
And that wasn't driven by high birth rate. You don't grow a population by such high births. More and more people across the whole age spectrum were self-confident enough, felt safe, felt secure enough to self-identify as Indigenous. So we need to remember that this is self-identification, because we can't tell people what to identify as. And we don't want to run some sort of racial profiling as Germany has done under Nazi rule to decide who is what ethnicity. That's nonsensical as well. But it just means, in my reading of the data, that we made big advances as a country, in a sense that we are now providing a country where more people feel safe enough to self-identify as whatever the hell they want to identify as. And that is great process. Once again, this doesn't fit the narrative that some people might want to tell you, that we are a intolerant country. I think Australia is offering an increasingly better framework for anyone living in it.
We should be very proud of that. I guess it's got the same to do with sexual orientation, that people are now getting more comfortable. So we are maturing as a country, Simon. Any other insights?
Well, lots and lots with the census data already. Lots of fun facts, like we become less religious. We are now very unreligious. That leads to some places like the kingdom of atheists in Byron Bay, where close to 70% of the population say they have no religious affiliation whatsoever. So I sure would love to speak to the local priest or minister of Byron Bay, just to hear their stories.
Are there any takeaways for those of us interested in property?
Well, so far, I think the main story regarding property is that there has been a shift in where we live. That means we have seen the COVID shift of people leaving the inner city in order to move to wherever they can afford 3 and 4 bedroom homes, because the people that are leaving the inner city are overwhelmingly young millennials that are now starting their own families. That means those millennials look for 3 and 4 bedroom houses, and they will move to wherever 3 and 4 bedroom houses are available / affordable. And that's not the inner suburbs where they currently live, because there is just no stock available. They're not moving to the middle suburbs where the baby boomers currently hog their family homes. They're not moving out yet. And where the councils are doing a good job in avoiding further development. So therefore, the millennials are moving to the urban fringe. They're even moving to the regional satellite hubs.
Well, we started off talking about, is this going to be a roaring 20s or not? What's the balance of this decade going to be? And I think on balance, we can look forward to the future, can't we, Simon?
Absolutely. There are lots and lots of challenges. There will be more curveballs that we can't even dream up yet coming our ways. But overall, the structural demographics of Australia still look favorable. We will continue to attract migrants, even though we need to be more generous in terms of allowing migrants into the country. But we get drive this way. If you look globally, our business model is very simple. We sell stuff we dig out of the ground and stuff we grow on top of the ground to the world. These commodities will only go up in price. So that means we make more money with the stuff that we do already. So there is no need to completely reinvent the Australian economy. What we're doing right now continues to work throughout the 2020s.
Well, I know this podcast is very popular in many countries in Africa and Asia. I just see that from the downloads. But for the vast majority of people listening to this who are in Australia, I guess we've won the lottery. We're living in the best country in the world. And despite it's all going on, the best time in history. So I love talking about these things with you once a month. Thanks for your time, Simon.
It's been a pleasure, Michael.
As you could hear with my chat with Simon, demographics is going to determine our destiny, so it's important to understand what's ahead. And part of the reason it's important is because it keeps us focused on the big picture, not just on all the news and what's happening instantly, because that's too easy to take you off track with your investment goals and your life goals. So it really is important to keep a big picture perspective. But I can understand with all the negative news at the moment why a lot of people are wondering, what should I do about the property market? Should I buy? Should I hold? Should I even maybe sell up my properties? Because I know a number of investors who can't remember the big picture get too carried away with the news at the moment, and they're thinking about selling up. Sure, we've had an amazing couple of years from a property investment standpoint, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's the right thing now to sit on the sidelines. Sure, we're experiencing high inflation, rising interest rates, more economic uncertainty than we've had for a while. And yes, the media is full of mixed messages about how people are claiming it's a bad time at the moment. But if you keep the big picture perspective in mind, if you think strategically and long term, you'll realise that now's as good an opportunity as ever to get set in the property markets at a time when there's less competition. I see a window of opportunity for those with a long-term focus because in due course, interest rates are going to reach their peak, probably early next year, and inflation's going to come under control and start to subside, hopefully later this year, but it probably won't be reported until early next year. And at that time, greed will overtake fear and buyers are going to be back in the market as they move on with their lives. But in the meantime, you need to be careful at this stage of the property cycle because in our mind, probably less than 4% of properties currently on the market are what I'd call investment grade. There's always going to be outperformers, good properties and secondary properties, and you shouldn't take any shortcuts at the moment. So if you want to take advantage of this stage of the property cycle, please have a chat with my team at Metropole. Go to metropole.com.au because we're going to offer you a time-tested system, frameworks that I've fine-tuned over 5 decades, a proven track record. We've bought close to $5 billion worth of property over the years for our clients. We've got true on-the-ground experience, but we don't sell property, so we give you strategic advice. We help with property investment, property development, property management, whether buying a home or an investment, wealth advisory, and business advisory as well. Metropole.com.au. Check out what we do, and organise your obligation-free complimentary clarity call to explore your options.
Now here's Michael's mindset message. Remember, a change in your thinking will lead to a change in your life.
In my mindset message to you today, I'd like to share with you 11 positive things about getting older that no one really tells you about. And now that I'm a bit older than most of the people listening to this podcast, and maybe over the years I've become a little bit wiser, I've realised that life's a journey of lessons. It's a journey of experiences and contains successes, and boy does it contain mistakes along the way. And of course there's lots of great things about getting older that no one tells you about, so I'd like to share 11 of those with you. Hey, maybe it'll give you something to look forward to. The first thing I'd like to share with you is I've learned you don't always have to be right. I remember when I was young it was really important to be right. Well, as the years passed by, I began to understand it's often better to lose a few battles in order to win the war. So I've chosen which battles to fight and which not. Sometimes it's better to be happy than to be right. The second lesson I've learned is not to judge. You see, early on in life we tend to want material things, we tend to strive for more things, but as we get older we realise that stuff isn't as important as people and relationships, and we learn not to judge but to accept people as they are. Another lesson as you get older is you begin to want less. We accumulate so much stuff on our journey through life, and much of it's redundant and in excess of what we actually need. So as we get older, we begin to realise that sometimes less is more. It's an incremental understanding that we don't need to surround ourselves with a whole lot of material things. Another lesson I've learned along the way is you gain more confidence in making decisions as you get older. It's true that age does bring wisdom, but it also does bring confidence. Now, why? I guess it's because as we get older, we accumulate experiences, and our life lessons are powerful tools to draw from when making future decisions. We've made the mistakes, but we've also learned from them, or I hope I have, and this instills an innate confidence for future decision making. As I go through these life lessons that no one teaches you about, some of the good things about getting older, it's one that your children become your friends. It's hard to think of our children as friends when they're first so dependent upon us, and then they become a bit more rebellious, and there's a period of time where they wonder about you, sometimes even hate you during the teenage years. What nobody tells you is that as they become adults, they grow their own lives and fulfill their own dreams. We as parents take on a different role. Children now return to the family home as individuals in their own right and as friends, and I'm very proud of the relationship I've got with my 4 children. I've also learned along the way that you understand there's no point in telling anyone what to do. At a certain age, you realise there's no point in telling others what to do. Actually, if you think about it, being given advice you didn't ask for never felt nice anyway. Yet I'm still seeing lots of people trolling me on YouTube, in particular, trying to tell me, push to me, their points of view. As you get older, you also learn that wrinkles should be worn with pride. Later in life, we realise that we're fortunate to be growing older and that wrinkles stand for a testimony to our experiences. It shows that we've successfully navigated the troughs and the peaks of life. So wrinkles represent the days of our life, each telling a different story. A couple more things I'd like to share with you that I've learned that are good about getting older. And one is we're able to treat our parents with unconditional respect. Now, unfortunately, I've now lost both my parents. They've passed away. But as you get older, our parents, although we love them, may have driven us mad at some points in our lives. And for those of us with children ourselves, isn't it interesting? The pattern's repeated. And as we get older, we learn to treat our mothers and fathers with respect and how to have patience as they reach the autumn years, because we've got a better understanding of the trials and tribulations that they've gone through in their own process of ageing. Another lesson I've learned, a good thing about getting older, is it's okay to play the fool again. You know, as children we laughed, we played the fool and generally didn't think too much about what other people thought of us. Then our egos developed, self-awareness set in, and we began to rein in our inner child and squash that idiosyncratic part of us that was once so spontaneous. Then when we reach a certain age, it begins to matter a lot less what other people think, and not taking ourselves so seriously becomes an option once again. There's two more good things I'd like to share with you that I've learned about getting older, and one is you learn not to criticise. As we get older, we learn there's little value being gained in criticising anyone else. If we need to say something, it's far better to say something positive than to dwell upon the negative. And the last good thing I'd like to share with you today about getting older is that you're thankful for growing old, because not everyone grows old. Many die before their time or in their primes of their life, and I've seen a number of my friends and professional colleagues who are no longer with us anymore. So with age comes gratitude and the knowledge that with every passing year we're privileged, and being grateful becomes a daily ritual that enhances our lives in so many positive ways. So I hope that my reminiscing has given you some hope for your future as you get older, because things do get better. No matter what's happening with your life at the moment, take a positive outlook, take control of your circumstances, and remember, the best is yet to come. I hope you enjoyed my monthly chat with Simon and you got some insights into what's ahead. And if you did get some benefit from it and you know somebody else who'd also benefit, please tell them about the Michael Yardney podcast. Help me in my quest to make as many people as financially literate as possible. I'll be back again real soon, but in the meantime, you can catch me on social media. Just look for Michael Yardney or join our private Facebook group. Go to Facebook and look for the Property Update Facebook group, where every day I leave some tips and some information. In the meantime, I've got a special bonus for you as a way of saying thank you for subscribing to this podcast. Go to podcastbonus.com.au and get a bundle of ebooks and reports. As I said, I'll be back again real soon. In the meantime, have a great week. Make it a great week.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Michael Yardney podcast, which was brought to you by Metropole, who help their clients grow, protect, and pass on their wealth through strategic property and wealth advice. If you like what you heard and don't already subscribe, you'll find us on iTunes or on your favourite Android app as the Michael Yardney podcast. Watch out for our next show, which comes to you twice a week, and you'll learn some new ideas about property investment, success, and money in around 30 minutes. To get more of Michael's thoughts, go across to www.propertyupdate.com.au and sign up for his daily morning briefing, and you'll hear from not only Michael but a group of leading property success and money experts. And just a reminder that the information you heard in this show today is general educational advice and not specific investment advice, as we don't know your personal circumstances. If you're looking for specific advice, why not ask the team at Metropole to help you?